Hey everyone, welcome to Webtoon BL. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to join the family. Let's enjoy some amazing BL stories together.
Chapter 1: The Witness. The alley smelled like death and cheap whiskey. I pressed my back against the rain-slicked brick wall, my heart slamming against my ribs like a caged animal trying to escape. The November rain had stopped 20 minutes ago, but the air still hung heavy with moisture and the metallic tang of something I didn't want to name. Don't look. Don't you dare look. But my eyes betrayed me. 3 bodies lay crumpled near the dumpster, their expensive suits now soaked in something darker than rainwater. And standing over them, silhouetted against the flickering streetlight at the alley's mouth, was him, Luca Moretti. I'd seen his face before, on the covers of business magazines, in the society pages next to some leggy blonde or another, in the whispered warnings my boss Sal gave every new bartender at the Rusty Nail. You see that man walk through them doors, you pour his usual and you keep your eyes on the glass. You don't look him in the eye. You don't make small talk. You definitely don't ask questions. I should have listened. But 3 months ago, on a Tuesday night that started like any other, Luca Moretti had walked into our dive bar with blood on his cuff and murder in his ice blue eyes. He'd ordered a bourbon, neat, and when I'd set the glass down, our fingers had brushed. He'd looked at me then, really looked at me, and I'd felt it like a blade between my ribs. Run! Every instinct screamed. Run and don't look back. But I needed this job. Needed the tips that kept my sister's chemotherapy paid for, kept the lights on in our cramped apartment, kept food in the fridge. So I'd swallowed my fear and poured his drink and pretended not to notice the way his hands trembled slightly before the first sip. That was 3 months ago. 3 months of Luca Moretti appearing at the Rusty Nail every Tuesday and Thursday. Always alone, always ordering the same bourbon, always watching me with those predatory eyes. 3 months of me pretending not to feel the weight of that gaze, not to notice how the other patrons seemed to sense his presence and shrink away. 3 months of telling myself he was just a customer, just a rich man slumming it in a dive bar, just someone who appreciated my pour and nothing more. Then tonight happened. I'd been walking home after my shift, taking my usual shortcut through the alley behind 5th Street. It was faster than going around, and after 12 hours of slinging drinks and wiping counters, faster was all I cared about. My feet ached. My back screamed. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Chloe asking when I'd be home. I was typing out a reply when the gunshots rang out. 3 pops, like firecrackers, like the sound my father's old car made when it backfired. But I'd grown up in this neighborhood. I knew the difference between a car backfiring and a gunshot the way I knew the difference between cheap gin and the good stuff. I'd frozen mid-step, my phone clutched in my hand, my body pressed against a stack of pallets before my brain even caught up to what was happening. That's when I saw him. Luca Moretti, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than I made in a year, standing over 3 dead men like a dark angel of death. His blonde hair was slicked back from his face, and in the dim light, he looked like something carved from ice and sin. He hadn't seen me yet. Move, I told myself. Run. Get out of here before. Eli. My blood turned to ice. He said my name like he was savoring it, like it was a secret he'd been keeping and had finally decided to share. Slowly, so slowly, I raised my eyes to meet his. Those ice-blue eyes pinned me in place, and the faintest smile curved his lips. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who just realized his prey had wandered into the trap all on its own. You shouldn't be here, he said. His voice was low, smooth, the kind of voice that could talk you into doing things you'd regret in the morning. I didn't see anything. The words tumbled out of me, desperate and shaking. I just got here. I was walking home. I didn't. Eli. He said my name again, softer this time, and took a step toward me. Then another. His Italian leather shoes made no sound on the wet pavement, and somehow that was more terrifying than if he'd been stomping toward me. We both know that's a lie. My back hit the brick wall. I hadn't realized I'd been backing away, but now there was nowhere left to go. He stopped inches from me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and dark, with notes of cedar and smoke. Please, I whispered. I won't tell anyone. I swear on my sister's life, I won't. His hand came up, and I flinched, expecting a blow. Instead, his fingers brushed my cheek, trailing down to my jaw with a gentleness that made no sense given the 3 bodies lying 20 feet away. I believe you, he said, and there was something almost like regret in his voice. But it's not that simple, little mouse. Little mouse. The nickname should have been insulting, but from his lips, it sounded almost like an endearment, almost like he cared. Then what do you want from me? My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated myself for showing weakness. Hated the way my body trembled under his touch, the way my heart raced for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. Luca's smile widened, and I saw something flicker in those frozen eyes. Something hungry, something that made my stomach flip in a way that had nothing to do with the dead men nearby. What I want, he said, leaning in until his lips brushed the shell of my ear, is for you to be my fiancé. Chapter 2. The Proposition. I laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound burst out of me, hysterical and sharp, echoing off the alley walls like a gunshot. Here was a man who had just executed 3 people. 3 people whose blood was still wet on his shoes, and he was asking me to marry him. You're insane, I said, pushing against his chest. He didn't move. It was like pushing against a marble statue. You're completely and utterly insane. Perhaps. Luca stepped back, giving me room to breathe, but his eyes never left mine. But I'm also very serious. He reached into his jacket. My body tensed, expecting a gun. But he pulled out a cigarette instead, placing it between his lips with practiced ease. The lighter flicked once, twice, and then he was exhaling a cloud of smoke that curled between us like a question. Let me explain, he said, and there was something almost tired in his voice. Those men on the ground? They were sent by my father's enemies to kill me. This is the 3rd attempt this month. My family is at war, Eli, and I'm losing. So hire bodyguards. My voice was steadier now, though my hands still shook. Buy a bulletproof car. Move to Antarctica. I don't care. Just leave me out of it. I wish I could. And damn him, he actually sounded like he meant it. But you saw what happened here tonight. Even if I let you go, which I won't, my enemies will find out. They'll track you down and they'll assume you're connected to me. They'll kill you to get information you don't have. That's not my problem. The words came out louder than I intended, and I immediately lowered my voice, glancing toward the alley's entrance. Still empty. Still dark. You're the one who decided to commit multiple murders in a public alley. Executions, he corrected calmly. There's a difference. Is there? Luca took another drag of his cigarette, and in the orange glow of the tip, I could see the exhaustion etched into his face, the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks, and something about that vulnerability made my anger waver. The men I killed tonight, he said slowly, were responsible for the deaths of 12 of my people. 2 of them were guards I'd known since childhood. 1 was my cousin's wife. She was 7 months pregnant. His voice hardened. So forgive me if I don't lose sleep over sending them to hell. I swallowed hard. The story changed things, changed the way I looked at the bodies crumpled on the wet pavement. But it didn't change my situation. I'm sorry for your losses, I said carefully. Truly. But I don't see how fake marrying you helps anyone. Luca's eyes lit up with something that might have been approval. You're smarter than you look, little mouse. I like that. He flicked ash onto the ground and continued. My father, the head of the Moretti family, is dying. Cancer. He has 6 months, maybe less. When he goes, there will be a power struggle. 3 other families are circling like sharks, waiting to tear us apart. And a fiancé helps with that how? A show of stability, Luca said. A sign that I'm putting down roots, that I have something to protect beyond the family business. It's harder to attack a man who has a reason to live. His eyes met mine again, and something in his expression softened. You'd be protected, guarded at all times. You'd want for nothing money, clothes, a place to live. Your sister's medical bills would be paid in full. My breath caught. How do you know about Chloe? I know everything about you, Eli Carter. He said it simply, without apology. I know you're 26 years old. I know you dropped out of community college to support your sister after your parents died. I know you work 60 hours a week and still can't make ends meet. I know you've been sleeping on a pull-out couch for 3 years because you gave Chloe the only bedroom. Each word was a knife between my ribs, exposing truths I tried so hard to hide. I also know, he continued softer now, that you're brave, that you stood up to a group of drunk men last month when they were harassing the waitress, even though you were outnumbered 4-1. That you lied to your landlord about having a job to keep Chloe from worrying. That you've never taken a penny of charity even when you were starving. My throat tightened. Stop. You're a good person, Eli. Luca dropped his cigarette, grinding it under his heel. Better than me. Better than anyone in my world. And that's exactly why I need you. The rain started again, soft at first, then harder. Droplets clung to Luca's hair, ran down his angular face, soaked into his expensive suit. He didn't seem to notice. 6 months, he said. That's all I'm asking. 6 months of playing the devoted fiancé, and then you walk away with enough money to give Chloe the life she deserves. A new apartment, the best doctors, a future. And if I say no? The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Luca's face went blank, emotionless. And for the first time since he'd said my name in that alley, I felt real fear. Then I walk away, he said, and I knew he was lying. I let you go back to your life, and I hope my enemies don't find you. But they will, Eli. They always do. He turned to leave, his back straight, his steps measured. He was giving me a choice, or at least the illusion of one. Wait. The word left my mouth before I could stop it. Luca paused but didn't turn around. 6 months, I said, my voice barely audible over the rain. And Chloe's medical bills are paid in full. Every single one. And I get my own room. With a lock. Luca turned then, and the smile that spread across his face was nothing like the cold, predatory grin from before. It was almost warm. Whatever you want, little mouse. Stop calling me that. Never. He walked back to me, closing the distance in 3 long strides, and before I could react, his hand was cupping my face, tilting it up toward his. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I forgot how to breathe. We should seal the deal properly, he murmured, his eyes dropping to my mouth. People will expect a certain chemistry between us. I don't. He kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was the kind of kiss that stole breath and reason, that burned through every sensible thought in my head and left only heat. His tongue swept against mine, tasting of smoke and bourbon and something darker, and my hands fisted in his lapel without my permission. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. Good, he said, his voice rough. That's very good. I wanted to slap him. I wanted to kiss him again. I wanted to run screaming into the night and never look back. Instead, I said the words that would change everything. Fine. I'll do it. Chapter 3, The Mansion. The Moretti mansion sat atop a hill overlooking the city like a sleeping beast, all dark stone and iron gates and windows that reflected nothing but shadows. I'd seen it before, of course. Everyone in the city had seen it. But seeing it from the back seat of Luca's Rolls-Royce, with him sitting so close that his thigh pressed against mine, was different. It looked less like a home and more like a fortress. Impressive, isn't it? Luca didn't look up from his phone, his fingers flying across the screen in a rapid tattoo. He'd been like this since we'd left the alley, businesslike and distant, as if he hadn't just kissed me senseless an hour ago. It looks like a prison, I said flatly. That earned me a glance. Charming. I'm not here to be charming. I'm here for 6 months and then I'm gone. The car rolled to a stop before massive oak doors, and a uniformed driver hurried to open my door. Before I could step out, Luca's hand closed around my wrist. A few ground rules, he said, his voice low and serious. You don't go anywhere without a guard. You don't speak to anyone about our arrangement. As far as the world is concerned, we're madly in love. You don't enter the east wing of the house under any circumstances. And if I break these rules? His grip tightened, just shy of painful. Then you'll learn exactly why people call me the Ice Prince. He released me and stepped out of the car, his demeanor shifting instantly. By the time he rounded the vehicle to offer me his hand, he was smiling, a warm, adoring smile that made my stomach flip despite everything. "Ready, darling?" he asked, loud enough for the guards at the door to hear. I pasted on a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. "Ready, sweetheart." The inside of the mansion was even more overwhelming than the outside. Marble floors that reflected the chandeliers above. Paintings that belonged in museums. A staircase that curved upward like something from a Gothic romance novel. Everything smelled like money and old wood and the faint, coppery scent of something I didn't want to identify. A woman appeared at the top of the stairs, descending with the grace of someone who'd been born to this world. She was older, maybe 50, with the same ice-blue eyes as Luca and silver-streaked dark hair pulled into an elegant twist. "Luca, darling." Her voice was warm, but her eyes were cold as they swept over me. "You didn't tell me you were bringing company." "Mother, this is Eli Carter, my fiancé." The silence that followed was deafening. Luca's mother, Vivian Moretti, I remembered from the society pages, froze halfway down the stairs, one hand on the banister, her perfectly painted lips parting slightly. For a moment, she looked almost human in her shock. Then the mask slid back into place. "Fiancé," she repeated. "I see. And how long have you two been acquainted?" 3 months, Luca said smoothly, his arms sliding around my waist in a gesture that was both possessive and protective. "We've been keeping it private. You know how the press can be." "Indeed." Vivian reached the bottom of the stairs and circled me like a shark, her gaze dissecting every inch of my appearance. I was suddenly acutely aware of my cheap jeans, my worn boots, the hoodie with a small tear in the sleeve. "He's not what I expected." "What did you expect, Mother? Another heiress? Another debutante who would spend my money and spread her legs for the gardener?" "Luca." Vivian's composure cracked. "That's enough." "Is it? You've been trying to marry me off since I was 22. Well, here you go. I found my own." He pulled me closer, and I felt the tension thrumming through his body. "Eli and I are going to retire to my quarters. We've had a long night." He didn't wait for a response, just steered me up the stairs and down a hallway lined with more expensive artwork. I counted 12 doors before he stopped in front of one at the very end. "My room," he said, pushing the door open. "Yours now, too, for appearances." The room was massive, larger than my entire apartment, with a 4-poster bed, a fireplace that was already crackling, and windows that overlooked the city lights below. It was beautiful and impersonal, like a hotel suite that had never known a real home. "Your room is through there." Luca pointed to a door on the far wall. "It has its own bathroom and, yes, a lock. I keep my word." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Now that we were alone, now that the adrenaline was fading, the reality of what I'd agreed to was crashing over me like a wave. "I should warn you," Luca said, loosening his tie, "that my father will want to meet you. Tomorrow, probably. He's unwell, but his mind is still sharp. He'll ask questions. He'll push for weaknesses. You cannot show him any." "Why not?" Luca's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something beneath the ice. Something wounded. Something almost scared. "Because if my father thinks you're a weakness, he'll have you killed before breakfast." Chapter 4, The Father. I didn't sleep. The bed in my room was softer than anything I'd ever felt, with sheets that probably cost more than my monthly rent, but I couldn't close my eyes without seeing Luca's face when he'd said those words. "He'll have you killed before breakfast." Somehow, I'd managed to convince myself that this was all a game. A rich man's play acting. A temporary inconvenience that would end with me walking away richer than I'd ever dreamed. But Luca's warning had shattered that illusion. This was real. These people killed. I was still staring at the ceiling when the door creaked open at 6 a.m. Luca stood in the doorway, already dressed in a charcoal suit, his hair perfectly styled. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Up," he said. "My father takes breakfast at 6:30 sharp. You'll need to shower and change." "What's wrong with what I'm wearing?" I gestured to my hoodie and jeans, which I'd slept in because I didn't trust this place enough to change into the silk pajamas I'd found in the dresser. Luca's jaw tightened. "Everything. There's a closet in the bathroom. Pick something." He left before I could argue, and I stumbled to the bathroom to find a walk-in closet filled with clothes in my exact size. Expensive clothes, designer labels I'd only ever seen in magazines. I grabbed the simplest thing I could find, a black cashmere sweater and dark slacks, and prayed I wouldn't stain them before the day was over. When I emerged, Luca was waiting by the door, a cup of coffee in his hand. He held it out to me without a word. "Black," I said, surprised. "How did you take your coffee black with 2 sugars?" His lips quirked. "I told you. I know everything." I took the coffee and followed him down the winding stairs to a dining room that looked like something from a period drama. A long mahogany table dominated the space, set for 6, but only one person sat at the head. Donato Moretti was dying. I'd seen photos of him in the news, a powerful man with Luca's ice-blue eyes and a smile that could charm or threaten depending on his mood. But the man before me was a ghost of those photos. His skin was yellowed, stretched tight over prominent bones. His hair had thinned to wisps. His hands trembled as they gripped the arms of his wheelchair. But his eyes, those eyes were still sharp, still dangerous. "So," his voice was a rasp, a whisper of what it must have once been. "This is the boy who's captured my son's heart." The sarcasm in his tone was unmistakable. Luca pulled out a chair for me, and I sat, careful to keep my expression neutral. "Father, you look well. Don't lie to me, boy. I look like death warmed over, and we both know it." Donato's gaze fixed on me, and I felt like a butterfly under glass. "Eli Carter, bartender, orphan, sister with cancer." He smiled, thin and cruel. "Did you think I wouldn't do my research?" "I assumed you would, sir." The room went quiet. Luca shot me a warning glance, but I held Donato's gaze. I'd spent years dealing with drunk men twice my size, with landlords who wanted to evict me, with hospital administrators who wanted to deny Chloe's treatments. A dying old man didn't scare me. At least that's what I told myself. Donato laughed. A wet, rattling sound that turned into a cough. "He's got spine. I'll give you that." He wiped his mouth with a napkin and gestured to the food spread across the table. "Eat. We have much to discuss." Breakfast was a torture of small talk and veiled threats. Donato asked about my family, my education, my plans for the future. He asked questions designed to trip me up, and I answered each one as carefully as I could. Beside me, Luca was silent, his hand occasionally brushing mine in what I assumed was meant to be a comforting gesture. "You're too old," Donato said finally, pushing his plate away. "Luca's previous companions have been younger, prettier." "Father." "What? I'm just being honest. The boy is 26. If you wanted a wife to give you heirs, you'd have chosen a woman." Donato's eyes glittered. "Unless this is about something else entirely." Luca's hand tightened on mine under the table. "Eli is not a woman. He can't give me children. But he can give me something more valuable." "And what's that?" "Loyalty." Luca's voice was steel. "He's not here for my money or my name. He's here because he chose to be. Because he wants me, not what I can give him." The lie was so smooth, so convincing, that I almost believed it myself. Donato studied us both for a long moment, and then he did something unexpected. He smiled, a real smile, not the cruel one from before. "Perhaps I misjudged you," he said to me. "Perhaps there's more to you than I thought." He motioned to a servant, who appeared with a small velvet box. "A gift. For the happy couple." Luca took the box and opened it. Inside were 2 rings, simple platinum bands that gleamed in the morning light. "Family heirlooms," Donato said. "My grandfather brought them from Sicily. They've been worn by every Moretti bride for 4 generations." His eyes met mine. or groom as the case may be. Luca slid one ring onto my finger without ceremony, then handed me the other. My hands were shaking as I took his left hand, beautiful, long-fingered, with calluses I hadn't expected, and pushed the band into place. The metal was warm against his skin, and when our fingers intertwined, something electric passed between us. Donato watched it all with an unreadable expression. 6 months, he said. That's how long I give it. Care to make a wager? Luca asked, his smile sharp. I always win, son. Don't forget that. But as we left the dining room, Luca's hand still holding mine, I couldn't shake the feeling that Donato's prediction wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Chapter 5, The First Crack. 2 weeks into our engagement, I learned that living with Luca Moretti was like living with a ghost. He was there but not there, present in the mansion but always just out of reach, buried in meetings or phone calls or meetings about phone calls. We shared a bedroom for appearances, but he rarely slept, and when he did, it was in fits and starts, his body jerking awake with nightmares he never discussed. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself he was a monster, a killer, a man who dragged me into his world against my will. But then I'd find him in the kitchen at 3 a.m., standing over the sink with a glass of bourbon, and the shadows under his eyes would look so deep, so dark, that I'd forget to hate him. You should sleep, I said one night, leaning against the doorframe. I'd woken up thirsty and found him here, exactly as I'd expected. I should do a lot of things. He didn't turn around. Go back to bed, Eli. Can't. Your guards keep walking past my door. The floorboards creak. That got his attention. He turned, glass in hand, and raised an eyebrow. You can hear them? They're trained to be silent. I grew up in a house with paper-thin walls and a sister who had night terrors. I can hear everything. Luca studied me for a long moment, then gestured to the stool beside him. I hesitated. Everything in me screamed to go back to my room, to lock the door and pretend this conversation wasn't happening. But my feet carried me forward anyway. The first time I killed someone, Luca said quietly, I was 17. I froze mid-step. It was a man named Victor. He'd been my father's enemy for years. He kidnapped me from school, kept me in a warehouse for 3 days, beat me, broke 3 of my fingers. Luca held up his left hand, and I saw the faint crook in his pinky and ring finger that I'd never noticed before. When my father's men found us, they gave me a gun and told me to finish it. You were a child, I whispered. I was a Moretti. He took a long drink of his bourbon. I pulled the trigger and watched his brain paint the wall behind him. And do you know what my father said to me afterward? I shook my head. He said, now you're a man. Luca's laugh was bitter, hollow. So you see, Eli, when I tell you I'm a monster, I'm not being dramatic. I'm being honest. Something inside me cracked. I didn't know this man, not really. I knew his reputation, his coldness, the blood on his hands. But standing in that kitchen, watching him stare into his glass like it held all the answers, I saw something else. I saw a boy who'd never had a choice. Why me? The question came out before I could stop it. Out of all the people in that bar, all the people in this city, why did you choose me? Luca set down his glass and turned to face me fully. In the dim light, his eyes looked almost warm. The first time I walked into the Rusty Nail, he said, I was planning to kill myself. My heart stopped. I'd just come from a meeting where I'd watched my father beat a man to death with his bare hands. I'd watched and done nothing, because that's what's expected of me. I drove for hours, looking for somewhere. Anywhere. That wasn't my life. He smiled, sad and small. I ended up at your bar. I remember, I said, because I did. I remembered the way he'd looked that night, hollow, empty, like a shell of a person. I'd poured his drink and asked if he was okay, and he'd looked at me like I'd spoken a language he'd forgotten. You asked if I was okay, Luca continued. No one had asked me that in years. Not my mother, not my father, not any of the people who work for me. But you, a stranger who didn't know my name or my reputation, you looked at me and saw someone worth asking. I was just being polite. No. He stepped closer and I didn't step back. You were being kind. and I'd forgotten what that felt like. His hand came up to cup my face, the same gesture from the alley, but softer now, more tentative. "I didn't choose you because you saw something you shouldn't have," he said. "I chose you because you're the only good thing in my life, and I'm selfish enough to want to keep you." "You can't keep me," I whispered, even as I leaned into his touch. "I'm not yours." "Then why are you still here?" I didn't have an answer, or maybe I did and I was too scared to say it. Luca kissed me then, slowly, gently, nothing like the first time. His lips moved against mine like he was memorizing the taste of me, and when his tongue swept into my mouth, I made a sound I'd never made before, a sound of surrender. He pulled back, breathing hard, and rested his forehead against mine. "Tell me to stop," he said. "Tell me you don't want this, and I'll never touch you again." I should have said it. I should have pushed him away, gone back to my room, locked the door and waited out my 6 months in safety. Instead, I pulled him closer and kissed him back. Chapter 6. The Secret. 3 months into our engagement, I found the photograph. It was hidden in Luca's study, tucked behind a book on the top shelf, a place I never would have looked if I hadn't been searching for a pen. The book fell, the photograph fluttered out, and my world shattered. It was a picture of my brother, Leo Carter, 2 years older than me, with the same brown eyes and crooked smile. He'd disappeared 8 years ago, vanished without a trace, and the police had written him off as a runaway. I'd never believed that. Leo wouldn't have left me. He wouldn't have abandoned Chloe, who was only 12 at the time. But here he was in a photograph standing next to a man I recognized, Donato Moretti. They were smiling at each other like old friends, and in the background, I could see the distinctive stonework of the Moretti mansion. Leo had been here. He'd known these people, and then he'd disappeared. My hands were shaking as I turned the photograph over. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, were 2 words: "Problem solved." I heard footsteps in the hallway and shoved the photograph into my pocket just as Luca walked in. "There you are." He was smiling, actually smiling, something he'd been doing more often lately. The past 3 months had changed us both. The fake touches had become real. The forced smiles had become genuine. Somewhere along the way I'd stopped pretending. But now, looking at him, all I could see was my brother's face. "What's wrong?" Luca's smile faded as he took in my expression. "Eli, you look like you've seen a ghost. Have you ever lied to me?" The words came out harsher than I intended. Luca's eyes narrowed. "What is this about? Answer the question." He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze searching my face. "Everyone lies, Eli. You know that better than anyone. About the important things." My voice cracked. "About the things that matter." "Then no." He stepped closer, reaching for me, and I flinched away. His hand dropped. "Eli, please, tell me what's happening." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. I wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, to make him tell me that my brother was still alive somewhere, that the photograph meant nothing, that Donato wasn't responsible for whatever had happened to Leo. But I'd learned something in 3 months of living with Luca Moretti. I'd learned that he was a master manipulator, that he could lie as easily as he breathed. If I confronted him now, he would deflect. He would distract. He would make me doubt what I'd seen. So I swallowed my anger and forced myself to smile. "Nothing," I said. "Just tired. I think I need some air." Luca's eyes searched mine, and I saw the moment he decided to let it go. "Okay, but take a guard with you." "I will." I left the study and walked calmly down the hallway, calmly down the stairs, calmly past the guards at the front door. It wasn't until I was in the garden, hidden behind a hedge of roses, that I let myself fall apart. Leo was dead. I'd known it on some level for 8 years. But seeing that photograph, seeing the casual cruelty of those 2 words scrawled on the back, "Problem solved," made it real in a way it had never been before. And Luca had known. He'd known this whole time, while he held my hand and kissed me goodnight and made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in the world. He'd known that his family had taken the only person who'd ever loved me unconditionally. I pulled out my phone and dialed the only number I could think of. Chloe. My voice was steadier than I felt. I need you to do something for me, and I need you to not ask why. Eli? What's going on? You sound weird. Just listen. I took a deep breath and prepared to tell my sister the truth I'd been hiding for months. Remember how I told you I got a new job? The one with the really nice boss. Yeah? I lied. I'm engaged to the son of a mob boss, and I think his family murdered Leo. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Then Chloe spoke, her voice small and terrified. Eli, what have you gotten yourself into? I don't know yet, I said, looking up at the mansion where Luca was probably already searching for me. But I'm going to find out. And when I do, I'm going to make them pay. Chapter 7. The Unraveling. I spent the next week pretending everything was normal. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Every morning, I woke up next to Luca. He'd started sleeping in the same bed as me, his arm thrown possessively over my waist. And every morning, I had to stop myself from screaming. I laughed at his jokes. I held his hand in public. I let him kiss me senseless in the back of his Rolls-Royce. But inside, I was planning. Chloe had come through for me using her computer skills. She'd always been the tech genius in the family, to dig into the Moretti family's history. She'd found articles, police reports, whispered rumors on dark web forums. She'd found mentions of a young man named Leo Carter who'd gotten too close to the family, who'd threatened to expose their operations to the FBI. And she'd found a name. Viktor Volkov, the same man Luca had killed when he was 17. The same man who'd kidnapped him, beaten him, broken his fingers. According to Chloe's research, Viktor had been working with Leo. They'd been building a case against the Moretti family together, gathering evidence that would finally bring them down. And then Viktor had disappeared. Leo had disappeared. And Luca had pulled the trigger. I didn't know if Luca knew the full story, if he'd known that Viktor was working with my brother, if he'd killed him to protect his family's secrets. But it didn't matter. He was a Moretti. They were all the same. Eli. I looked up from my phone to find Luca standing in the doorway of our bedroom, his expression unreadable. What? Don't what me? He walked into the room, and I saw the tension in his shoulders, the tightness in his jaw. You've been distant all week. You flinch every time I touch you. I want to know why. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. His voice was sharp, dangerous. The Ice Prince making an appearance after months of absence. I've had people killed for lying to me, Eli. You know that. Then kill me. The words came out flat, emotionless. If that's what you do to people who tell you the truth, go ahead. Pull out your gun and shoot me. It would be easier than this. Luca froze. What are you saying? I stood up from the bed, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading and craving in equal measure. I found a photograph, I said. In your study, behind a book on the top shelf. Luca's face went pale. It was my brother, I continued, my voice shaking. My brother Leo standing next to your father, right here in this house. And on the back, someone had written 2 words. I pulled the photograph from my pocket and threw it at his chest. Problem solved. Luca caught the photograph reflexively, his eyes dropping to the image. When he looked up again, his face was ashen. Eli, I can explain. Can you? I laughed, and it was an ugly sound. Can you explain why your family murdered my brother? Can you bring him back? Can you undo 8 years of me wondering if he was dead or alive? If he'd abandoned us? If he'd ever loved us at all? He did love you. Luca's voice was raw, desperate. Leo talked about you constantly. You and Chloe. He said you were the only good things in his life. Don't. My voice broke. Don't you dare pretend you knew him. Don't you dare pretend to care. I did know him. Luca stepped closer, and I didn't have the strength to back away. He was my friend, Eli. My best friend. Viktor was going to kill him. He'd already threatened to multiple times, and Leo came to me for help. He wanted to disappear, to start over somewhere far away from all of this. So what happened? Luca's jaw tightened. My father found out. He said Leo was a liability, that he knew too much. He said, He swallowed hard. He said he'd handle it. And you let him. I was 17. Luca's control shattered, and for the first time, I saw real emotion on his face. Real pain. I was 17 years old, and my father told me that if I didn't do what he said, he'd kill my mother. He'd kill my sister. He'd kill everyone I'd ever loved. What was I supposed to do? Fight back. I screamed. Protect the people who mattered. Leo mattered. He mattered to me, and you let him die. I didn't have a choice. We always have a choice. We stood there, breathing hard, the photograph lying on the floor between us. Leo's face stared up at the ceiling, his crooked smile frozen in time. Then Luca did something I didn't expect. He dropped to his knees. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice cracked on the words. "I'm so sorry, Eli. I've carried this guilt for 8 years. Every time I looked at you, every time I touched you, I saw his face. I knew I didn't deserve you. I knew you'd hate me if you ever found out. I don't hate you." The words surprised me as much as they surprised him. "I want to. God knows I want to. But I don't." "Then what do you feel?" I looked down at this man. This killer, this monster, this broken boy who'd been forced to grow up too fast, and I felt something I couldn't name. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I'm going to find out. And you're going to help me." "Help you do what?" I knelt down in front of him, so close that our knees touched, so close that I could see the tears he was trying to hide. "We're going to bring your father down," I said, "together, and then we're going to find out what really happened to my brother." Luca's eyes widened. "You're asking me to betray my family. I'm asking you to do what's right." I reached out and took his hand, the ring on my finger catching the light. "For once in your life, Luca, I'm asking you to choose." Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The plan was simple. Tomorrow night, Donato was hosting a gala at the mansion. All the major families would be there, along with half the city's politicians and law enforcement. It was the perfect opportunity to expose the Moretti family's secrets. Chloe had gathered enough evidence to put Donato away for life. Bank records, wiretaps, witness testimony from former associates who'd turned state's evidence. All we had to do was get it into the hands of the one person who could actually use it. FBI Special Agent Marcus Webb. The same agent who'd been investigating the Moretti family for a decade. There was only one problem. "He's on my father's payroll," Luca said, pacing our bedroom. It was 2 a.m., and neither of us had slept. "Webb takes money from the family. He's not going to turn on his cash cow. Then we find someone who will." I was sitting on the edge of the bed, going through the files Chloe had sent. "What about the DA? The governor? Someone has to be clean." Luca stopped pacing and looked at me. "You really think we can do this?" It wasn't a question. "I have to believe we can," I said. "For Leo. For everyone else your father has destroyed." Luca crossed the room and sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. "You know what happens if we fail. We won't fail. But if we do." He turned to face me, and there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Real fear, not for himself, but for me. "My father will kill you, Eli. He won't make it quick. He won't be merciful. He'll make an example of you, and he'll make me watch. Then we'd better not fail." Luca kissed me then, hard and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of me. I kissed him back just as fiercely, my hands fisting in his hair, pulling him closer. We fell back onto the bed in a tangle of limbs, the files scattering around us. "I love you," Luca said against my mouth. "I know I have no right to say it. I know you probably hate me, but I love you, Eli. I've loved you since the moment you asked if I was okay." My heart clenched. "You don't get to say that." "I know. Not after everything you've done." "I know. Say it again." Luca pulled back, his eyes searching mine. "I love you. And despite everything, despite the lies and the secrets and the blood, I believed him." "I love you too," I whispered. "And I hate myself for it." Luca smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "That's okay. I hate myself too. We lay there in the darkness, holding each other like we might never get the chance again. Outside, the mansion was quiet, but we both knew it was the calm before the storm. Tomorrow, everything would change. One way or another. Chapter 9, The Gala. The Moretti mansion had never looked more beautiful. Thousands of twinkling lights draped the gardens, reflecting off the fountains and the champagne glasses and the diamonds that adorned the throats of the city's elite. Music drifted through the air, a string quartet playing something classical and elegant, and the scent of expensive perfume and even more expensive food hung heavy in the night. I stood at Luca's side, dressed in a black tuxedo that had been tailored to fit me perfectly, and smiled at people whose names I'd never remember. Every smile felt like a mask. Every touch felt like a lie. But I'd gotten good at pretending. "Relax," Luca murmured, his lips brushing my ear. "You're doing fine. Easy for you to say. You were born to this. And you were born to be so much more." He squeezed my hand, and I felt the weight of the USB drive hidden in my pocket. All the evidence, all the proof waiting to be delivered. We'd found someone clean. Assistant District Attorney Maria Santos, a young woman with a reputation for incorruptibility and a personal grudge against Donato Moretti. Her father had been a judge who'd ruled against the family 20 years ago. He died in a car accident 3 days later. Maria was waiting in the garden, disguised as a caterer. All we had to do was get the USB drive to her without being seen. "Luca," Donato's voice cut through the crowd like a knife. He was in his wheelchair, pushed by a nurse I'd never seen before, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "A word." Luca's grip on my hand tightened. "Of course, father. Alone." Luca looked at me, and I saw the conflict in his eyes. I nodded slightly, silently telling him to go. We'd planned for this. I could handle myself. "Don't go anywhere," Luca said, kissing my forehead. "I'll be right back." I watched him walk away, disappearing into the crowd with his father, and then I moved. The garden was crowded with guests, but I'd spent 3 months learning the mansion's layout. I knew the hidden paths, the secluded corners, the places where no one ever looked. I slipped through the shadows like a ghost until I found Maria Santos standing by the fountain, her caterer's uniform looking completely out of place. "Mr. Carter." Her voice was low, professional. "Do you have it?" I pulled out the USB drive and pressed it into her palm. "Everything you need is on there. Bank records, wiretaps, witness testimony. It's enough to put Donato away for life." Maria's eyes widened slightly as she pocketed the drive. "And Luca, he's helping us, but he wants immunity in exchange. That can be arranged, as long as he testifies." "He will," I hoped. "Just promise me you'll protect him. His father will try to kill him when he finds out." "I'll do everything I can." Maria glanced over my shoulder, her expression hardening. "But right now you have bigger problems." I turned to see Luca walking toward me, his face pale, his eyes wild. "We have to go," he said, grabbing my arm. "Now." "What happened?" "My father knows." My blood turned to ice. "How?" "I don't know. But he sent men to your sister's apartment 20 minutes ago." Luca's voice shook. "Chloe is gone, Eli. They took her." The world tilted sideways. My sister, my little sister, the only family I had left, was in the hands of a man who'd already killed my brother. "No." The word came out as a whisper. "No, no, no. We're going to get her back." Luca pulled me toward the mansion, toward the chaos that was already erupting inside. "But you need to stay close to me. Do you understand? Don't leave my side for anything." I nodded, barely able to breathe, and followed him into the storm. The gala had descended into pandemonium. Guests were screaming, rushing for the exits, as Donato's men flooded the ballroom with guns drawn. And at the center of it all, seated in his wheelchair like a king on a throne, was Donato Moretti. "Eli Carter." His voice carried across the room, silencing the chaos. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Chapter 10, The Choice. Donato's eyes were cold, cruel, and utterly without mercy. "I'll ask you once," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom. Where is the evidence you stole from me? I felt Luca's hand tighten on mine, felt the eyes of every person in the room boring into me. This was it. The moment everything came crashing down. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Donato smiled, thin, reptilian. Of course you don't. Just like you don't know what happened to your brother. Just like you don't know that Luca has been lying to you since the moment you met. Luca stiffened beside me. Father, don't what? Tell the truth. Donato laughed, and the sound echoed off the marble walls. Oh, this is rich. You really haven't told him, have you? About the real reason you chose him. My heart pounded in my chest. What is he talking about, Luca? Luca's face was white, his eyes wide with something that looked like terror. Eli, please, whatever he says. Your precious Luca wasn't just protecting the family when he killed Viktor Volkov. Donato's smile widened. He was protecting himself. Because Viktor wasn't working alone. He was working with someone else. Someone who knew all the family's secrets. Someone who'd been feeding information to the FBI for months. No. The word came out as a whisper. Yes. Donato leaned forward in his wheelchair, his eyes glittering with malice. Your brother Leo wasn't a victim, Eli. He was a traitor. And Luca killed him. The world stopped. I turned to Luca, searching his face for denial, for explanation, for anything that would make this not true. But Luca just stood there, silent, his face a mask of anguish. Is it true? My voice cracked. Luca, tell me it's not true. I didn't have a choice. The words were barely audible. Leo was going to get us all killed. The FBI was going to raid the mansion, arrest everyone. My mother, my sister, the children. Hundreds of people would have gone to prison or died in the crossfire. So you killed him. I did what I had to do. I ripped my hand from his grip and stumbled backward, my chest heaving. You lied to me. This whole time you lied. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. I was screaming now, but I didn't care. You let me believe my brother was a victim. You let me grieve for him. And all along, you were the one who... Eli, listen to me. Luca stepped toward me, his hands raised like he was approaching a wounded animal. Yes, I killed Leo, but I didn't want to. He was my friend, and I begged him to stop, to walk away, to disappear like he'd planned. But he wouldn't. He said he'd rather die than let your father continue destroying innocent lives. My father! Donato's roar shook the room. I am not the villain here, boy. I built this empire from nothing. I gave this city jobs, money, stability. And this is how you repay me? By conspiring with my son to destroy everything I've built. Your empire is built on blood. I spun to face him, all my grief and rage finally finding a target. You've killed dozens of people. You've ruined hundreds of lives. And for what? Money? Power? You're dying, Donato. In 6 months, none of this will matter. But the people you've hurt, the families you've destroyed, they'll remember. They'll always remember. Donato's face twisted with fury. Guards. The men in black suits raised their guns, aiming at me, at Luca, at the terrified guests still cowering in the corners. I'm going to give you one last chance, Donato said. Tell me where the evidence is, and I'll make your death quick. Refuse, and I'll make you watch as I kill your sister first. Then Luca. Then every person in this room who ever showed you kindness. My blood ran cold. Chloe. They still had Chloe. Don't do this, father. Luca stepped in front of me, blocking the guns with his body. This isn't about the family anymore. It's about your ego. Your pride. You've already lost. You just don't know it yet. Oh, Donato raised an eyebrow. And why is that? Because the evidence isn't in this room. Luca's voice was steady, calm. It's already been delivered. To someone your money can't buy. Donato's face went pale. You're lying. Am I? Luca reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone, holding it up so everyone could see the screen. This is a live feed from the FBI field office. Assistant Director Webb is currently reviewing the evidence as we speak. In approximately 10 minutes, every federal agent in the city will be on their way here. You're bluffing. I'm not. Luca's smile was sharp, triumphant. I've been planning this for months, father. Longer than you know. Every wiretap, every bank record, every testimony. I helped Leo gather it all before he died. And I've been waiting for the right moment to use it. Donato stared at his son, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. You would destroy your own family, he whispered. You destroyed it first. Luca's voice broke. When you made me kill my best friend. When you turned me into a monster. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing it so no one else has to become what I am. The room was silent, frozen, everyone waiting for what would happen next. Then Donato laughed. It was a terrible sound. Wet, rattling, full of madness. You think this changes anything? You think putting me in prison will make you free? You're a Moretti, Luca. You have my blood in your veins. My darkness. You can't escape what you are. Watch me. The sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, reflecting off the chandeliers and the champagne glasses and the faces of the guests. It was over. Donato's guards lowered their weapons, glancing at each other uncertainly. Some of them slipped out the back, disappearing into the shadows. Others raised their hands in surrender. And Donato, the great Donato Moretti, the king of the city's underworld, slumped in his wheelchair, his face collapsing into something old and broken and utterly defeated. You win, he said to Luca. I hope you're happy. I'm not happy. Luca's voice was barely audible. I'm just tired, so tired of pretending. The doors burst open, and FBI agents flooded the room, guns drawn, shouting commands. I watched as they handcuffed Donato, as they led him away, as the guests streamed out into the night. And through it all, Luca stood beside me, not touching me, not speaking, just waiting. When the last agent had left, when the last guest had fled, when the mansion was finally empty except for the two of us, I turned to face him. You killed my brother. Yes. You lied to me for months. Yes. You made me fall in love with you. Luca's eyes glistened with tears. Yes. I took a step toward him, then another, until we were close enough that I could feel his breath on my face. I should hate you, I whispered. You should. I should walk away and never look back. You should. And I will. My hand came up to cup his face, to wipe away the tear that was falling down his cheek. Someday, but not tonight. Luca's breath caught. Eli, tonight, I said. I'm going to stay, because I love you, even though I shouldn't. Even though it's wrong. Even though you don't deserve it. I don't deserve you, he agreed. No, you don't. I kissed him softly, gently, tasting the salt of his tears on my lips. But I'm going to give you a chance anyway. One chance to prove that you're more than your father's son. One chance to be the man I know you can be. And if I fail, then I'll leave. I pulled back, looking into his ice-blue eyes that were no longer cold. And I won't look back. Luca nodded slowly, his hand coming up to cover mine where it rested on his cheek. I won't fail you. I swear it on Leo's memory. Good. I took his hand and led him toward the door, toward the flashing lights and the waiting world. Because we have a lot of work to do, starting with finding my sister. Chloe is safe, Luca said. I had my men extract her before the gala started. She's at a hotel downtown, under federal protection. I stopped walking and stared at him. You planned for this? I've been planning for this for 8 years. His smile was sad, but real. I just needed the right reason to finally go through with it. And you, he squeezed my hand. You were the reason, Eli. You've always been the reason. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to hold onto my grief and my betrayal and my righteous fury. But looking at this man, this broken, complicated, impossible man, all I felt was tired and hopeful and maybe, just maybe, ready to start over. Come on, I said, pulling him toward the door. Let's go find our future. Luca followed, and together we walked out of the mansion and into the night. Behind us, the lights of the Moretti estate flickered and died. Ahead of us, the city waited, bright, dangerous, full of possibilities. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth having ever was. But for the first time in 8 years, I believed that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Epilogue. 6 months later. The rusty nail looked exactly the same as it had the night Luca first walked through its doors. Same sticky floors. Same flickering neon sign. Same smell of cheap whiskey and desperation. I stood behind the bar, pouring drinks for the usual crowd, and tried not to think about how much had changed. Donato Moretti was in federal prison, serving multiple life sentences. The Moretti empire had crumbled, its assets seized, its associates scattered. Luca had testified against his father in exchange for immunity, and now he was… what? Free? Recovering? Learning how to be a normal person for the first time in his life. We hadn't spoken in 3 months. After the gala, after the arrests, after the chaos had finally settled, Luca had looked at me with those ice-blue eyes and said, "I need to figure out who I am without the family, without the violence, without the lies." I'd nodded, understanding even though it hurt, and I'd walked away. Now he was standing in the doorway of the rusty nail, looking lost and out of place in his simple gray sweater and jeans. Eli, my heart stopped. Luca. He walked toward the bar, and every head in the room turned to watch. Even now, even after everything, he had that presence, that gravity, that something that made it impossible to look away. "I know I don't have the right to ask," he said, sliding onto a stool. "But I was hoping you'd pour me a drink. What'll it be? Surprise me." I reached for the bourbon, his usual, then stopped. He'd asked me to surprise him. He'd asked me to show him something new. I mixed him a drink I'd been perfecting for months. A cocktail I'd invented in his absence. Something sweet and bitter and complex. Something that tasted like forgiveness. Luca took a sip, and his eyes widened. "What is this?" "I call it second chances." I leaned against the bar, close enough to touch. "Do you like it?" He set down the glass and reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. "I love it." Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, the bar was silent, everyone watching the two of us like we were characters in a story. Maybe we were. "The thing is," I said, "I've been thinking about Leo, about you, about everything." Luca's grip tightened. And I realized something. I looked down at our joined hands, at the platinum band still on my finger. I'd never taken it off. My brother didn't die for nothing. He died to bring down a monster. And you, I met Luca's eyes. You finished what he started. I didn't do it for him. I know. I smiled, and it felt like coming home. You did it for me. Luca stood up, pulling me into his arms right there in front of everyone. "I love you, Eli Carter. I've loved you since the moment you asked if I was okay. I'll love you until the day I die. Then stop walking away." I said, my voice breaking. "Stay. Fight. Be the man I know you can be." "I will." He kissed me, soft and sweet and full of promise. "If you'll have me." I kissed him back, and the bar erupted in applause. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was still so much work to do, so much healing to be done. But standing in that dive bar, wrapped in the arms of a man I'd once feared, and then hated and then loved against all reason, I felt something I hadn't felt in 8 years. "Hope. Come on," I said, taking his hand and leading him toward the back door. "Let's go home." Luca smiled, that real smile, the one he saved just for me, and followed me into the night. Together.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep enjoying BL stories with Webtoon BL.